Thelma, what do you think of this book, The Medium is the Massage?
Well, I'm rather interested in it because normally, if you criticize McLuhan, the disciples all complain that you're taking things out of context. And they say, oh, you know, you don't really understand it when you point out one passage which sounds particularly absurd. And they insist that you understand it in context. What I don't understand about this book, which is just a series of passages out of context, is why it was published and why I gather McLuhan gave it its blessing, his blessing.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Why this idea of taking it completely out of context, which exposes McLuhan in his most vulnerable sense. I think McLuhan as a whole is worth studying as a whole, but this kind of taking it out of context, I really don't understand. The pictures are wonderful. I enjoyed those.
Well, McLuhan exposes himself constantly. This is part of his charm, I think. He's always been willing to be taken out of context. He's always been willing to make the offhand remark, what he calls a probe. In fact, his books are out of context. It's only a McLuhan apologist or a McLuhanite who would suggest that you need to take a whole McLuhan book at once. I mean, his whole method of working is to say you don't need to read all of it. You read bits and pieces. You start in the middle of his book and go to the back, and then start at the back and go to the front. And in fact, this book is very much in his style, I think.
It's in his style, but it certainly doesn't give anyone a very good picture of the structure of his thought.
No, it's just a quick glance at him.
Well, the point of the matter is the truly important contribution that this book will make is that it is written and illustrated on a mass appeal level that will whet the appetites of hundreds of thousands of young and mentally young people who would never have been able to attack an understanding media or any of his other books without reading this first.
I disagree entirely. I think that this book would tend to satisfy you, and this other books wouldn't. I mean, when I read Understanding Media, I want to read 16 other books and worry about all the implications of it. It sends me off into all sorts of spirals of thought and so on. Whereas The Medium is the Massage is very final and dogmatic. That's why I'm wrong with it. It makes McLuhanism into dogma. What do you think, Dean?
I don't understand why you're so enthusiastic about the pictures. I think the pictures are the worst part of this book because they're trying to put in visual illustration what he's saying. I think the pictures are dreadfully corny and artificial because of that. I think the only reason that they're there is you get a book of 90-odd pages and you can read it very fast because of all the pictures, so you feel you've achieved something.
This is a 20-minute book, or isn't it? Or no. If you were speed reading it,
well,
it's
McLuhan for the consumer. It's
That's
quick
right.
McLuhan.
That's exactly what my thesis was.
Not the thinker.
I don't think the pictures have anything to do with it.
The point of the matter is that the consumer, Bob, would not be able to comprehend an understanding media. The point of the matter is that the consumer, Bob, would not be able to comprehend an understanding media the first time around. And that's why I feel that this would more or less whet their appetites and give them the confidence to go on. When I personally may be the first guy in history that didn't graduate high school but attended 4 colleges. When I read a McLuhan book, I mine a McLuhan book. I have a dictionary right next to me. The strengths that I have in my field is the fact that I may be one of the few people that are visually oriented. So when I see a combination of something like that, when I read this book, and this was in the last 48 hours, McLuhan he literally electrifies me. In truth, I worked out a whole campaign on this New Wood account while I was reading the book, and this New World Review thing. And I'll tell you what I come up with, which must be a direct outgrowth of this book. I'm going to have the first psychedelic press conference for this World Review thing of mine, wherein I'm going to actually bring pictures alive. This is a book of news pictures. That's the reason I brought it down here. And in reading this triggered the whole thing and set the whole thing off in my mind.
Dennis, how do you react to this practical use of Marshall McLuhan in press agentry and so on?
Well, I'd like to talk about this book. I think this book is McLuhan's first or most conspicuous attempt to spell out the McLuhan cult. I think that this is the book with which he reaches the masses. And after all, McLuhan is talking to the masses. He's always talking about a mass society. And heretofore, his books have been read by a very narrow circle of intellectuals.
True.
And not understood even by them in many cases. Not all of his books, or all parts of his books are understood, sure of that. And but in the meantime, because of a particular revolution in our culture, which includes pop art and the new fashions and the new left and all those revolutionary forces, McLuhan has been tossed up as the prophet of this. And I think he's now consciously promoting the cult. And there are several things in the book that are sort of the classic steps of anyone promoting a cult. And one of them is something that Eric Hoffer notes in his book, The True Believer, that anyone founding a new religion, whether it's communism or even Christianity, one of the things he has to downgrade and destroy is the family. Jesus Christ did that in the Bible. There are passages of Scripture in which Jesus tells his followers not to honor the family or their parents or their brothers and sisters, but him, the movement. Now, McLuhan does that. He's saying that there's one passage there where he says that mom and dad aren't enough anymore. It's the total environment. The total environment is the new cult. It's the new religion, and its prophet is Marshall McLuhan. And
he downgrades the family, but he does another thing which any demagogue does, and that is to downgrade thought itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think perhaps one of the most devastating criticisms to be made of McLuhan is that he is so anti-intellectual. He doesn't want his books read as a coherent system of thought, nor does he believe in coherent systems of thought. That's part of a Gutenberg era. That's part of analysis.
All religions
yes.
are
and this is
obscure.
This is really ideology.
Disputable.
It's
Mm-hmm.
not idea.
Well, before we sign up McLuhan and the neo-Nazi movement, I'd like to say a few things about that. Actually, he does have a lot of respect for coherent thought. His books are full of the work of extremely coherent thinkers. He's tremendously influenced by coherence on many levels. His greatest influence was Harold Innis, an economist who surely was coherent and highly academic in his way of writing and his way of approaching questions. McLuhan, for his particular messages, his particular style, doesn't believe in coherent linear thought. That's true, and he believes that the world is slipping away from being dominated by linear thinking. But that doesn't make him an enemy of this kind of thinking.